Demonstrators in Parliament Square hugged the shade. Inside Parliament, the Welfare Secretary was telling MPs the 4-point threshold test, which disability groups say would cruelly snatch personal independence payments from claimants, would still be brought into effect this autumn.
From November 2026, new claimants will be assessed under the 4-point criteria.
In the Downing Street garden, music and drinks for public sector workers.
Thank you for coming to where I live, to my house, and standing in my garden. I'm sorry we haven't got more shade.
Beneath the calm, the government was approaching panic stations. A rebellion they thought had been quelled had reignited.
It is with a heavy, broken heart that I will be voting against this bill today. As a matter of conscience, I need my constituents to know I cannot support the proposed changes to PIP as currently drafted on the face of the bill before us today.
These Dickensian cuts belong to a different era and a different party. They are far from what this Labour Party is for.
Most of us are aware that the dog's breakfast of this bill is being driven by the need to get 4 points to the OBR to enable it to be scored.
Not long after that, Liz Kendall was told that the 4 points PIP threshold test she'd just recommitted to was being dropped by the government. She hurried out of the Commons chamber, and 90 minutes later her deputy stood up to say the government was ripping out this central part of the bill.
And that is why I can announce that we are going to remove the clause 5 from the bill at committee, that we will move straight to the wider review, sometimes referred to as the Timms review, and only make changes to PIP eligibility activities and descriptors following that review.
That review, the government said, would be co-authored or co-produced with disability groups. Their opposition to the government's points schedule suggests the final reform will look very different from the government's original article.
This has further laid bare the incoherent and shambolic nature of this process. It is the most unedifying spectacle that I have ever seen.
Earlier, the traditional left of the party mustered to show their hostility to the bill. And can I ask you, are you going to win tonight?
Yes. All winners.
Absolutely. Where are the rest of you? It's meant to be 100 plus.
They're writing their fantastic speeches.
In fact, many of them were being chatted to by government whips who'd sensed the government was facing defeat on welfare. Something Keir Starmer acknowledged in a weekend interview he'd been slow to see coming.
Well, he apologised for taking his eye off the ball, didn't he? And for our constituents, that's just not good enough. We need to do better.
Earlier at Cabinet, the Welfare Secretary was still defending what was government policy, and Keir Starmer warned Cabinet Ministers he wouldn't tolerate attacks on his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who some rebels have blamed for this whole saga.
I'm right in saying we've got a drone up that's going to take a photograph of us, not quite sure where it is. But there is a group. Oh, there it is. Look, over there. Can you see?
Many will wonder where Keir Starmer now tries to take his government, having dumped winter fuel payment policy, U-turned on gangs, now on PIP, and apologised for a series of recent campaign lines. And people say they're not sure what the shape of his politics is. Do you think it could actually change substantially the shape of his politics?
Well, a lot depends on what the people who are advising him think. These are the people that got him into this mess in the first place.
The people who run him, you think?
The people that run him, they need to change their mind.
Some of those who led the wider mainstream Labour loyalist revolt are still stunned by the leadership's slowness at engaging with them.
We'd been all engaging since the first Green Paper was laid, and we continued engaging by putting forward a reasoned amendment to get the government to listen and engage with us more.
It shouldn't have come to that, should it?
It shouldn't have come to that.
What happened? What do you think was going on in government?
I think there are so many things going on. I think
fingers in ears.
I think it's fair
denial.
to say winning the election last year, really big milestone for us. But governing is difficult. There were many holes that we had to look at.
The final stages of the debate were peppered with expressions of astonishment, anger and confusion.
This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man.
More the stuff you'd expect during Brexit wars or a minority government. Not 1 year into a government with a 165 working majority.
everyone's out now.
Well, Gary's with me now. An extraordinary couple of days, concessions being offered to the very last minute.
Vast concessions. As we speak, there is a hole in the public accounts. The savings that these welfare reforms were supposed to make just will not be made. The Resolution Foundation just coming out with an estimate that all the savings have gone. By the way, it's about $5.5 billion. Rachel Reeves originally went looking for 10 billion. There's a hole not just in the public accounts, there's a hole in the government's political strategy, and there's a hole in the credibility of the leadership. It's a nightmare moment. I was just in the voting lobbies. They're voting now on the amendments. Gone ahead. They're still voting on whether they disapprove of a policy that more or less just vaporised. And going past me were all these Labour MPs, ministers, cabinet ministers, and almost to a man and a woman, they were doing mad faces, crazed laughter. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Nobody could quite put it into words. This is the sort of stuff of end of days with governments, not the stuff you expect 1 year in with a with a really comfortable majority. And tellingly this, the vote they're doing now, they're going to vote on a policy that just disappeared, and they'll still get, apparently the whips expect, about 50 rebels, because that's the nature of a party that is just slightly out of control. But the key thing is, earlier this afternoon, they thought that was going to reach 80 votes against the government, 80 plus. And the majority was in danger. Keir Starmer was in a very, very nasty place. He wouldn't have vaporised this entire measure unless he was. And so much of that goes back to a general election where Labour didn't want to increase the size of the target on its back. It didn't want to promise too much. It just wanted to say, don't worry, we won't do this, we won't do that. It didn't really fight a mandate election. And so much of his troubles seem to come back to that.
Well, we'll come back to you when we hear the vote in a couple of moments, we hope. Well, one of the reasons the government has been under such pressure has been the growing public anger, as well as the backlash from MPs. Protesters against cuts to disability benefits have been rallying outside Parliament today, and our reporter Ruben Reuter has been speaking to some of them about why they oppose the bill.
As MPs prepare to vote on the government's welfare bill, here at Parliament, people are gathering outside to make their voices heard. Why are you here today?
I'm here because I'm particularly angry with how the Labour government are targeting the most vulnerable of the community.
Talking to people here, the concessions the government have made makes no difference to how they feel. What are the issues with this bill?
This bill is like saying we're collateral damage and we don't matter. Disabled people are already living on the poverty line as it is. We need the support when we need the support. We need to be able to work when we want to be able to work. We need to be able to engage with social activities when we can.
We're angry, disgusted about what the government's proposals are to. This is going to be harmful to disabled people. And it's actually going to kill disabled people. Not just put us into poverty, but kill.
We want to live like everybody else. You know, we have the same right as everybody else.
It's not about what are the issues, it's about what is it doing to rip disabled people's lives.
Disabled people should have been consulted before the bill has been put on the table.
Like it would affect me, like paying my housing rent and other stuff for my supported living home, and it'll affect my friends, and it'll affect like what you can spend your money on.
As a general, they're punishing disabled people by cutting their benefits, and I don't think that's right. Because we know that disabled people want to work and they need extra support for that.
The campaign has brought the disabled community together, including actor Matt Fraser. What are the issues with this bill?
The biggest issue that I have with this bill is that the entire concept of it is cruel and mean and evil. They're not Labour values, trying to find $5 billion by making the poorest and most vulnerable people in society pay their bill when they're not even considering a tiny little wealth tax that would pay for everything. I just don't understand what Labour's become. Under Keir Starmer, it's unrecognisable.
One thing for sure, No matter what unfolds in Parliament today, Labour's standing with the disabled community has taken a real hit. And with savings on the line, the question is, are there further changes to come?